Good morning, Metalheads here, and welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown. And today we're looking at the latest album from Today Is the Day, entitled No Good to Anyone. This is the 8th studio album from the American rock band Today Is the Day, who have existed in the deep underground of rock and heavy metal for the last 30 years, crafting some of the most psychotic, disturbing, and versatile material that you may have ever heard. And I'm not saying this to simply grab your attention. I mean it literally, to the point where I would even challenge you to find something from the world of underground rock and metal more demanding, perverse, demented, and musically flexible than any one record from Today Is the Day. Their music pulls from a wide variety of different influences and sounds, such as alternative rock, alternative metal, indie music, sludge metal, black metal, hardcore punk, post-hardcore, noise rock, grindcore. A lot of very unusual mixing and production techniques, samples, dissonance, lyrics typically dealing with mental illness, depression, extreme violence. Think I Hate God meets Acid Bath meets Neutral Milk Hotel meets Daniel Johnson, and you're kind of in the right ballpark. As much as I admire the twisted sound and ambition of this project, even I have trouble listening to a lot of these records. They're pretty challenging, they're pretty demanding. I kind of see them as like the sonic equivalent to taking a really bad fall and ending up with a huge open gash across your leg. You just kind of sit there awkwardly staring at it, not really sure what to do. You know that you're in pain, you know that something's wrong, but you're just in so much shock that you can't really process it. That's what a Today Is the Day album is like. It's awkward, it's shocking, it's weird, and it's a lot of information to process right away. And unfortunately, when I began to compile research on this record and learn more about what's happened to Today Is the Day in the last 6 years since their last studio album, my fears of another abhorrently extreme, objectively uncomfortable record were not quelled. We'll focus more on some of those not-so-nice details later when we're actually talking about the music, but for now, let's just say that the last couple of years have not been particularly kind to Steve. But the twist here, ladies and gentlemen, is that this is actually a much more accessible record than I would have ever imagined emanating from Today Is the Day. Which isn't to say that it's going to be on pop radio or anything like that. I mean, it's still pretty extreme, avant-garde metal. You know, it's still pretty harrowing, demented, fucked up shit. But compared to their previous records, and especially when considering everything that's happened to Steve in the last couple of years, it is notably a little less manic, a little less melodramatic, a little less psychotic, a little less intense. There are definitely still moments like that across this album, but overall, this is a much more focused, dare I say, mature and refined Today Is the Day than the one that dominated underground rock and metal in the early 90s. Now, the album sounds like business as usual for Today Is the Day on the opening track, No Good to Anyone, and you're not objectively wrong for thinking that. I mean, it is a pretty ominous cut. There's a loud hissing bass that pulses throughout the entire track, a lot of very weird deranged vocals, a lot of hectic sludgy riffs, onslaughts of black metal carnage implemented at random intersections in the song, immediately tensing you up, forcing you to prepare for a massive climax of gruesome, violent noise. But interestingly, that climax never comes. The song puts you in this weird state of heightened alert, and you're just kind of forced to absorb every single note and moment. It's a fascinating moment of misdirection that allows you to absorb everything happening without literally scaring the crap out of you, unlike previous Today Is the Day records. And from there, you're invited and led firsthand by Steve Austin into his own mind as he laments about the government, about the rock and roll lifestyle, about war, about his own mental illness, about his own personal struggles. Take, for instance, the serrated yet hypnotic trances and soundscapes of You're All Gonna Die, which kind of feels like the extremely twisted brainchild of Voivod and Acid Bath. Or on a track like Burn in Hell, which intentionally wobbles and lunders around like a drunken rock star on his last bottle of Jack Daniels, as Steve laments on his anger towards the stereotypical rock and roll lifestyle and how it ends up killing so many talented people so young in their lives. In the hands of another musician, a lot of these ideas would come across as the failed experiments of a dated, aging rock star. But in the hands of Steve Austin, a man who has seen so much and suffered so much in his time, there's something genuinely kind of bittersweet and honest about it. Everything he's talking about is coming from a place of real sincerity, and the music complements it quite nicely by being so jagged, so raw, so unpolished, and at times just plain weird. It does make for an inherently troubling listen, but I think, as we've already noted, that just kind of comes with the territory of Today Is the Day. That is something that is not going to change about this band, especially not now. But this sonic insanity embracing this is a lot more digestible and even comfortable when you come to a handful of tracks where Steve is pulling from his own personal life, and suddenly we're seeing a side of Steve and Today Is the Day that I don't know if I would have associated with this project before. As I noted before, the last 6-7 years have been particularly tough for Steve, and these tracks is where he pulls from experiences from that time. He was in a really bad car accident, he's had a lot of different medical mishaps, his dog died, he's dealt with the fact that he is just getting older and can't necessarily do what he used to do anymore, and it's in a few tracks where all of this is felt and all of it is realized in a sonic form. Take, for instance, the closing track, Rockets and Dreams, a really cathartic number where Steve's own son is playing keyboards with him in this really hypnotic, psychedelic, laid-back kind of art rock song that still pulls heavily from some extreme influences and sounds, but it is weirdly a more casual moment on the album. Or on my favorite track, Callie, where Steve takes a really open and honest moment to pay homage to his departed dog of the same name, Callie. Suddenly, acoustic guitars and reverb fill the air. Suddenly, things feel a lot more natural. Suddenly, it feels more like we're at a wake, a funeral. It's honest, it's tender, it's revealing. It kind of feels like a really dark Neil Young ballad, but performed by Daniel Johnson. It's so effective that it honestly makes me want to hear a full-blown acoustic album from Steve in the near future. I was genuinely surprised by and immersed in this album, and for these reasons, I feel more than comfortable giving this a 3.5 out of 5. Some of the rough and ragged edges are still a little bit too rough and ragged for my personal liking. It still does make for a semi-awkward listen, and there are definitely things I would change in regards to how the album has been mixed and arranged. But it is overall a very satisfying listen, and I think people who really love weird, dark, experimental music are going to have a lot of fun dissecting this album and peeling back all the possible layers, finding all kinds of things that I either didn't find or just don't have the time here to talk about. As far as newcomers are concerned, I would say give it a shot, but definitely approach with caution. Maybe start with softer tracks like Rockets and Dreams and Callie. See how you feel after that. This is definitely not going to be for everyone. This is definitely not the kind of thing that you're ever going to casually listen to. It's not going to be known in general as a particularly comfortable and accessible listen, and for that reason, it is still inherently hard to recommend. But if you exercise a little bit of patience and restraint, you might find something really fascinating and special here, just like I did. So 3.5 out of 5, a cautiously enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5 at that, mind you, but a 3.5 out of 5 nonetheless. It's a really good record. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately, and you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.